At 3:30 in the morning, thousands of men were already marked for death. They just didn't know which ones. The sea was violent. The plan was breaking. And one decision, made while a man slept, almost changed the entire history of the world. This is D-Day, and this is the story of how it almost failed. On the night of June 5th, 1944, the English Channel was hostile. Winds tore across the water. Waves slammed into steel hulls. Rain blurred the horizon. For the men waiting to cross, this was not a heroic moment. It was an hour filled with fear, nausea, and silence. In command rooms across southern England, senior officers stood over maps that had taken years to prepare. Every arrow, every marked beach.
Gentlemen, the enemy is advancing here. We must counterattack along this line. All units, prepare to move at dawn.
Every timing line depended on one fragile thing: the weather. And the weather was turning against them. One commander broke the silence and said quietly, "If this storm holds, the landing craft will
the
scatter.
situation has escalated.
Men
We
will
must
land
act
in
now.
the wrong places."
Review these maps.
Another
Move
answer.
at dawn.
Slower, heavier.
The situation is critical.
If we delay
Mobilize
again,
immediately.
the Germans will
Prepare
know.
your units. No delays.
Surprise will be gone. Outside those rooms, thousands of soldiers waited without knowing any of this. They sat shoulder to shoulder inside landing craft, soaked by seawater, gripping rifles already rusting from salt. A young infantryman reached into his pocket and unfolded a small letter. He had already read it 10 times. He read it again anyway. Across from him, his friend stared at the black water and finally spoke. "You ever notice how quiet it gets?" he said.
Command,
Right
this
before
patrol.
something
Visibility is
terrible
near
happens.
zero. This storm is
The
getting
other
worse.
man nodded
Think we can
but
hold
didn't
course?
answer.
We have to. No turning back.
Some soldiers
Stay
talked
sharp.
about home. Others said nothing at all. A few were sick over the side of the boat. Fear was everywhere, but so was something else. An unspoken understanding that there was no turning back. Behind the scenes, the final decision approached. This was not a brave moment. It was a calculated risk, weighed in lives.
Gentlemen, the storm is upon us. Sir, these reports confirm it. Barometer's dropping fast.
One officer later said there was no confidence in the room, only responsibility. Shortly before dawn, the order was given. Engines started. The boats moved forward into rough water. Men checked weapons they prayed they would never have to use. Some crossed themselves. Some closed their eyes. Some whispered names they loved. No speeches were given. No cheers were heard. Only the sound of waves, engines, and thousands of hearts beating faster as Europe waited for what came next. And when the first gray light touched the sky, the most dangerous part of D-Day was about to begin. The first shots of D-Day were not heroic. They were confusing, sudden, and deadly.
Keep your head down!
As the landing craft pushed closer to the shore, the sea did not calm. Waves lifted boats and slammed them down again, throwing men off balance. Many units were already off course. Landmarks disappeared in smoke and fog. The carefully planned formations were breaking apart before a single soldier touched the sand. Then the ramps dropped. Some men froze. Others ran without thinking. A few never moved at all. Machine gun fire tore across the beaches. Bullets struck water, metal, and flesh with equal violence. Soldiers fell before taking 5 steps. Equipment weighed men down. Some drowned only meters from land. A survivor later said, "It felt like the beach itself was trying to kill us." Officers were among the first casualties. Radios were destroyed. Orders were lost in the noise. Young soldiers, many experiencing combat for the first time, suddenly found themselves alone, pinned down, forced to decide whether to move forward or stay still and die. A private pressed himself against a steel obstacle, breathing hard. Next to him, a man screamed for help. The private looked up, terrified, and shouted back, "I don't know what to do!" No one answered. This was the moment D-Day nearly collapsed. Entire units were scattered. Tanks meant to support the infantry sank offshore. Medics ran openly across gunfire, knowing they were targets. The beach was not a battlefield. It was chaos without shape or control. And yet, in that chaos, something began to happen. Small groups formed on their own. A sergeant took charge without orders. A soldier picked up a weapon from a fallen comrade and moved forward anyway. Men who had never met before looked at each other and understood the same truth. Staying here meant death. One wounded soldier grabbed another by the arm and said through pain, "Don't stop. If you stop, it's over." They moved, slowly, terrified, determined. The German defenses were strong, but not perfect. Each meter gained, each bunker silenced, changed the balance. What had been disorder began, inch by inch, to turn into momentum. But the soldiers on the beach did not know that. All they knew was that survival depended on moving forward, into gunfire, into fear, into history. And far behind the front lines, a decision that could end everything was being delayed. While soldiers fought and died on the beaches of Normandy, the outcome of D-Day was still uncertain. From the sand and smoke, it felt like chaos. From a distance, it looked like opportunity. German commanders were not blind. Reports came in quickly.
Koordinate 47, verstehen!
Parachutes in the night, landings along the coast, heavy fighting on multiple beaches. They knew this was not a small raid. This was the invasion they had been waiting for. Several German generals immediately asked for permission to move their armored divisions, the tanks that could crush the landing before it had time to survive. If those tanks moved early, the men on the beaches would be trapped between the sea and steel. But permission did not come. Adolf Hitler had reserved control of the armored units for himself. And in the early hours of June 6th, he was asleep. His staff, fearing his anger, refused to wake him without absolute certainty.
We can't wake
So
him
the
without
orders
certainty.
waited,
But
and
his
the
anger
hours
we
passed.
delay. I know. We
One
must be
German
sure.
officer later admitted, "We knew what was happening. We knew what must be done. And yet, we did nothing." Those lost hours were everything. On the beaches, Allied soldiers knew nothing about this delay. They did not know tanks were waiting. They did not know the enemy hesitated. They only knew the fighting had not stopped. A wounded corporal lay behind a sand ridge, bleeding, his rifle useless. Another soldier crawled toward him under fire. "Go back," the wounded man whispered. "You'll get killed." The other soldier shook his head.
Stay with me!
"Not leaving you."
Trying. It stings.
Moments like this
Thanks,
were
best
happening everywhere. Quiet acts of courage that never reached command reports. Men carried strangers. Medics worked until they collapsed. Leadership came not from rank, but from whoever was still standing. Slowly, almost invisibly, the balance began to shift. Beach exits were opened. German positions were flanked. Communication improved. Supplies came ashore. What had looked like disaster began to stabilize, not because of perfect planning, but because the invasion had not been stopped in time. By late morning, the chance to push the Allies back into the sea was slipping away. A German officer would later say, with bitter clarity,
we
"That
lost the
morning,
war."
we lost the war." D-Day had not succeeded yet. Thousands were dead. Thousands more were wounded. But the most dangerous moment, the moment when everything could have ended, had passed. History had balanced on a few silent hours, and it did not fall. By the afternoon of June 6, 1944, the beaches of Normandy were no longer silent, but they were no longer lost. Smoke drifted over the shoreline. Wrecked landing craft burned in shallow water. Bodies lay where they had fallen. The cost of the invasion was already terrible, and it was far from over. But something critical had changed. The Allies were still standing. D-Day did not survive because it went according to plan. It survived because people adapted when the plan
We
collapsed.
adapt. New direction, bridge ahead.
Small
Copy that.
decisions
Moving out.
made under impossible pressure changed the course of the day. A lieutenant chose a different route up a cliff. A radio operator repaired a broken line under fire. A group of soldiers pushed forward simply because stopping meant death. None of these moments were dramatic on their own, but together they created momentum. By nightfall, the Allies held the beaches. The victory was not clean. It was not complete. Many soldiers who landed that morning would never leave France. Others would carry the weight of that day for the rest of their lives. One survivor later said, "People ask me if I felt brave.
People ask me if
I
I
didn't.
felt brave.
I was scared
didn't.
every second.
I was scared every
I
second.
just kept moving."
I just kept moving.
That quiet truth explains D-Day better than any speech. Across Normandy, soldiers dug in as darkness returned. Some wrote short notes in the margins of maps. Some stared at the ground, exhausted beyond words. Some cried for friends lost, for relief, for survival. The invasion of Europe had begun. D-Day almost failed because it depended on too many fragile things: weather, timing, silence, courage. A storm nearly canceled it. Confusion nearly destroyed it. A delayed decision nearly ended it. But it survived because ordinary people refused to stop when everything told them to give up. History often remembers leaders and dates, but D-Day belongs to the unknown soldier who stood up under fire, to the medic who ran forward instead of away, to the men who were terrified and moved anyway. That is why D-Day matters. Not because it was perfect, not because it was easy, but because on a narrow strip of beach, at the
And
edge
the
of
world
failure,
was changed forever.
humanity chose to endure, and the world was changed forever.